We've all been there. You pick up your phone just for a second to check one notification.
Mhm.
And then you look up and 45 minutes have vanished. You've been scrolling through arguments or, I don't know, reading about some obscure historical event.
Right.
But the real question, the one our sources are asking, is this. How much of that time is actually reshaping your deepest values, your beliefs, even your real-world relationships?
It's a profound question.
It really is.
Mhm.
Today, we're diving into this fundamental, almost dizzying paradox. Social media, it promised us this amazing global connection.
It did. The promise was that knowledge and relationships would be accessible anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, completely dissolving all those old barriers,
Yeah.
geography, time, all of it. And to be fair, that's a huge achievement.
An undeniable one.
But, and this is the core of it, we are somehow more divided, more fragmented, and more isolated in our own little bubbles than ever before. And it seems like the sheer amount of information, and maybe more importantly, disinformation, is what's fueling this global fracture, a fracture that's, getting wider every day with AI getting smarter.
It's accelerating for sure.
So our mission for you in this deep dive is to unpack all of this, the cognitive, the social, the tech forces behind it. The goal here is for you to walk away understanding why critical thinking skills are, well, they're no longer just a good habit to have.
No, they're the essential operating system for navigating the world we live in now.
Exactly.
And what's so fascinating is just how fast this environment is changing. Our social norms, our culture, they're in this state of constant flux.
It feels chaotic.
It is. It's driven by this mix of sort of spontaneous energy and then also some very strategic thinking.
Yeah.
And that pace is just, it's outstripping the ability of entire societies to adapt.
Which makes us more vulnerable.
Right. But we can't lose sight of the upside. I mean,
Yeah.
The benefits are real. Social media gives us these on-demand opportunities to connect, to network with people all over the world.
And to raise awareness for really critical issues, right? Things that traditional gatekeepers might have just ignored.
Absolutely. The accessibility is real, and it's powerful.
Okay, so we're dealing with a system that's unifying and fragmenting us at the same time. It's beneficial and it's dangerous.
A very complex state to be in.
And the person who really put a name to this was Nathan Jurgensen. He coined the term digital dualism.
Right, digital dualism,
Uh-huh.
which is really about this mistake, this fallacy of trying to separate the virtual world from the real world.
Like they're two different places.
Exactly. For years, we talked about going online like it was a destination, a place you could visit and then leave.
Like you're leaving a building or something.
Precisely. But Jurgensen's point is that we're now just fully immersed in a cyber technology world. Technology isn't some tool we pick up and put down.
No, it's woven into everything.
It's infiltrated how we organize ourselves, our bodies, even our concept of self. You don't log in anymore. You just live in a world where the digital is part of your reality.
And if you accept that, that's the key to understanding the psychology of all this division.
It is.
Okay, so let's unpack that internal cost. If the digital world isn't separate, then every conflicting idea we see online, it hits us personally, immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the psychology of separation really starts. The second you see information that conflicts with something you already believe, you feel this discomfort.
That's cognitive dissonance. It's that friction, that really sharp internal conflict you feel when you're trying to hold two opposing ideas in your head at the same time.
And our brains just hate that feeling.
They're hardwired to seek consistency, stability. So that conflict is, for many people, almost intolerable. It makes you feel uneasy, angry, even a little desperate sometimes.
So what do? The coping mechanism is, well, it's destructive, but it works instantly to make you feel better.
It does.
You justify your own belief, maybe even make it more extreme, and at the same time, you find reasons to just deny or discredit the opposing facts. You don't argue the facts themselves, you attack the source.
Right.
Or their motive.
And that impulse is the literal fuel for modern online tribalism. It creates this situation where online groups just repeatedly justify and defend misinformation to each other.
Over and over again.
Until those falsehoods are basically cemented as undeniable truths within that group, they're all reinforcing each other's coping mechanism.
And there's data on this. It shows this comes at a real cost to how much people actually know.
A significant cost. Take the 2020 Pew Research Center study. It found about 1 in 5 U.S. adults said they get most of their political news from social media.
Okay, and what did that reliance cost them in terms of, being informed?
Well, the study found they were demonstrably less informed. and more likely to believe unproven claims compared to people who used a mix of sources like news outlets, print, broadcast.
Let's zero in on that knowledge gap because the numbers are, they're pretty staggering. For the social media group, only 17% were classified as highly knowledgeable.
Only 17.
Compare that to 39% for those who used a mix of sources. So relying only on that social media fire hose basically cuts your comprehensive knowledge by more than half.
It connects right back to the dissonance.
Yeah.
If your goal is to filter out anything that complicates your narrative, your information diet becomes incredibly narrow by design.
The platform is helping you achieve comfort, not balance.
Exactly. You're constantly choosing simple consistency over a much more complicated truth.
And that filtering, it's not just a choice we make, it's technological. Which brings us to the echo chamber effect. This is where the platform's design meets our own psychology. We have empirical studies now that confirm these highly segregated online communities exist. You end up in a digital room where pretty much everyone agrees with you.
And that polarization gets amplified because you have three things all working together perfectly. First, just the sheer volume of information. You have to filter it somehow.
Of course.
Second, our own built-in confirmation bias. We want to find things that make us feel like we were right all along.
All right, the things that make us feel smart.
And third, there's just a natural preference in how these platforms work for more extreme content. Nuance doesn't really go viral.
Outrage does.
Outrage always does.
And this is where that paradox of information access gets really harmful. We think having the whole internet means we get all the information, but the opposite happens.
Right.
The curation services, search engines, social media feeds, they're designed to filter content based on what you like, specifically to keep you engaged, to keep you looking at the screen.
The unintended consequence is you get shown narrower and narrower slices of the ideological spectrum.
And that fragments society into these isolated enclaves. There was a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences back in 2016 that actually verified this.
What did it find?
It showed that users cluster in these like-minded networks. Liberals and conservatives showed wildly different patterns of what they consumed and what they shared. We are literally building our own digital bubbles, and the platform reinforces the walls.
And those individual bubbles are now merging into something much bigger, something beyond just individual psychology. We're talking about the evolution of collective consciousness.
Okay.
To really get the scale of this, you have to look back at history. Before the internet, what society believed, what was real or important, was defined from the top down.
By mass media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The printing press, radio, television, they promised to, affirm a collective consciousness, but they ended up controlling it.
They curated reality for us.
They did. They defined the world through status quo ideals, through consumerism, through neatly packaged news. The world was vetted and handed to you by an elite group of gatekeepers.
You just absorbed what they broadcast.
And then the internet happened.
Yeah.
And that entire model it shattered.
Yeah.
Suddenly, collective consciousness didn't come from some distant authority anymore.
Right.
In our networked age, consciousness is now co-authored by everyone who participates, minute by minute.
And that has a name. Virtual collective consciousness, VCC.
VCC, yeah. It's defined as an internal knowledge catalyzed by social media platforms and shared by a plurality of individuals, driven by the spontaneity, homogeneity, and synchronicity of their online actions.
Okay, let's break that down.
It's a really powerful idea because it's bottom up. It's an emergent property. It doesn't need a leader or a central office. Think about a small online trend, a hashtag, a meme, a shared feeling. If millions of people share that at the same time, in the same way, that action very quickly becomes a shared internal knowledge. It becomes a new kind of authority, one that's distributed among the crowd.
So the power to shape what's real, which used to belong only to massive institutions, now it's been radically handed out to anyone with a keyboard.
It's a democratic power shift, but a very chaotic one.
Yeah.
And this VCC isn't just online noise. It's born from the collision of the physical and virtual worlds.
And it drives real collective action, leaderless movements, conflicts, things that have a profound impact on our actual lives.
Exactly.
The sources cite some massive examples of this. The uprisings in the Arab world in 2011, which were organized without any traditional media. And then more recently, the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, 2021. That was largely organized and motivated through these same decentralized digital channels.
The collective thought online becomes real-world action.
It does. Which leads to the question, who is best equipped to handle this kind of spontaneous, powerful collective thought?
And that brings us right back to how our individual brains work. A really groundbreaking study from Cambridge University looked at this. They wanted to see if differences in how our brains process information contribute to forming extreme ideologies.
So they weren't looking at what people believed, but how their brains were thinking.
Precisely. And the finding was pretty profound. Ideological attitudes actually mirrored cognitive decision-making. People with extremist attitudes, whether political, nationalistic, dogmatic, they tended to view the world in very stark black and white terms.
And here's the crucial part.
The crucial part is they struggled significantly with complex tasks, things that required intricate mental processing and planning.
So wait, the issue might not be a moral failing or even a lack of education. It could be about a difference in managing cognitive load.
In a way, yes. We're talking about things like working memory. Your ability to hold multiple conflicting pieces of data in your mind long enough to weigh them.
Or planning complex actions that require dealing with ambiguity.
Exactly. Complexity takes mental effort. The lead author, Dr. Zmigrod, she summarized it perfectly. She said, individuals with brains that struggle to process and plan complex action sequences may be more drawn to extreme or authoritarian ideologies that simplify the world.
That makes so much sense. It explains the appeal of tribalism and that quick fix of cognitive dissonance we talked about. If ambiguity is mentally painful, you run towards simplicity.
And they found another key trait. Those with extremist tendencies also struggled to regulate their emotions.
Making them more impulsive.
More impulsive and more likely to seek out those emotionally charged experiences that social media is so good at delivering. They also found that dogmatic people, the ones who resist credible evidence, they literally struggle to process new information, even at a basic perceptual level.
Their brain just resists the complexity from the start.
Before it even becomes a conscious thought.
This makes the argument for cultivating cognitive defenses just unavoidable, because the source material tells us something that goes against what most of us believe.
Which is?
We think critical, rational thinking is our natural state, our default mode.
And it's just not. Our unexamined thinking is biased, it's distorted, partial, uninformed. That is our default state.
So if you want to counter that drive toward tribalism and oversimplification, you have to systematically cultivate critical thinking. The formal definition is it's the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating information.
A simpler way to think of it is this. It's the skill set that lets you hit pause on that emotional response that extreme content is designed to trigger.
And instead of reacting, you ask questions.
You ask 3 questions.
Yeah.
What is the source? What data is missing here? And what is the other side of this argument failing to consider? It's not about having the right answer immediately. It's about applying some rigor to the information you get.
And the stakes for doing that couldn't be higher. Poor thinking is costly, not just in money, but in quality of life, in societal stability.
Yeah.
Excellence in thought isn't something you're born with. It has to be cultivated, especially now.
So what does that cultivation mean for the future, which is, inevitably coming?
Well, the growth of social media isn't slowing down. Statista is predicting that we'll exceed 5.85 billion users by 2027.
That's well over half the planet immersed in this VCC structure.
And as this virtual collective consciousness expands, so does the risk of it being manipulated. We're looking at a future where sophisticated tools, AI, machine learning, will be harnessed to influence VCC on a massive scale.
The real danger here is that facts will be shaped by a social group consciousness that is generated, shared, and believed by a combination of machines and biased influencers with their own agendas.
The algorithm won't just reflect your biases back to you. It will actively construct them.
For profit or for a political outcome.
It's why critical thinking starts to feel like a form of self-defense, maybe the ultimate form of self-defense. It reminds me of that observation from Yuval Noah Harari. Rumors and falsehoods travel faster than the truth, and that's never been more true.
And when you connect all these dots, you realize it's not the technology itself that's casting a shadow. It's the users.
It just exposes our own issues.
It exposes the fundamental things humanity needs to address, our cognitive biases, our preference for simplicity, our drive toward tribalism. It's just revealing the weaknesses in our own operating system.
So we've gone deep into this paradox, how global connection is somehow leading to unprecedented division. We've seen how the tech leverages our own cognitive dissonance to create tribalism, and how it all builds into this powerful bottom-up reality of virtual collective consciousness.
Hmm.
The critical takeaway is that your brain is actively being targeted for simplification, and the only real defense is rigorous, cultivated thought.
Yeah.
But I want to leave you with one final provocative question to think about as you navigate your own digitally immersed life. Knowing the algorithm is designed to simplify the world and feed your confirmation bias, what intentional, complex thought did you engage with today just to break that pattern?